Hey everybody, this is Kevin Davidson, your host for Kevin's Korner, and this is episode number 17. And I'm very excited because I have two great host guests on the podcast today. But I always have to start off the podcast by telling everybody that my support is Jennifer Smidas, the area vice president, Caitlin Kornick, Devin Devon, and Wendy Santana in the Richmond office, as well as the assistants and processors that we have here. So if you're looking for title insurance, if you're a real estate agent and you need a good title company, Stewart Title is the best. And by the way, we're 130 years old this year. At the same time, if you're a real estate agent that operates in the Fort Bend County area or a vendor, and you'd like to be on the podcast, reach out to me at 832-654-0527 or email me at kevin.davidson@stewart.com. And I'll be happy to get you on the calendar. So in saying this, let's get started. Episode number 17, Kevin's Korner, real estate from a marketing perspective. Once again, this distinguished young gentleman sitting next to me, we had some technical difficulties. This distinguished young gentleman sitting next to me is John Bramblett. Say hi, John.
Hi, John.
Awesome. He did that too the first time. Tell everybody what you do.
So I am in business development for Stewart Insurance. We're an independent property and casualty insurance broker. So I'm a licensed insurance advisor. We work with clients, both business and personal, all over the U.S. Mm-hmm. So as an independent broker, we have access to a variety of insurance companies, whether it be for somebody's personal insurance needs, home, wind, auto, flood, motorcycle, investment property, mm-hmm. or for a business. We focus heavily in the real estate world from a business perspective. So real estate brokers, realtors, independent title and attorney agents, property management firms, lenders, we help them with their business insurance. So errors and omissions, cyber liability, general liability, commercial property, workers' comp, those types of plans.
I don't think you missed anything. You cover pretty much everything.
We do. We're full service. There are two types of agents, as I mentioned. We're independent, have access to a variety of companies, and then you have a captive agent that's one company that is able to offer just the products that company offers in that market. Mm-hmm. So when it's a tough market like it is now in some parts of the country, we have access to a variety of companies that we can make sure that our clients are properly insured. And in our vernacular, that simply means that they're comfortable with the coverage that they have, mm-hmm. and they're aware of the coverage they have, so they know how much risk they're taking on themselves versus how much they're placing on the insurance company.
Exactly. Now, we talked about this a second ago, so we'll do it again. Why are insurance rates so high now, or going up so high?
So there are several things that have occurred. First and foremost, we had this thing called a pandemic that nobody was aware of, and we had to deal with. During the pandemic, those of us that were driving drove faster and a little, let's say, a little less conservatively, a little more reckless.
Why was that?
Because there's nobody else on the road.
Oh, I see. Okay.
And
open lanes.
Open lanes, and we had fun. Now that we're back to pre-pandemic traffic levels, okay, we're still driving aggressively, mm-hmm. and we're still driving recklessly. So we're seeing more accidents. Oh. So that's one element that is and everything affects everything. So that's one element. Because of the pandemic, we saw delays in supply chain. Mm-hmm. We saw some reduction in workforce. So some of the folks that would do the repairs, there's not as many folks doing that. So you've seen a longer time for a claim to take place. Mm-hmm. Over the last several years, we've had something like 17 significant natural disasters, whether it be a wildfire or a flood or a hurricane or heavy thunderstorms. Mm-hmm. So we've seen those that affects. Insurance companies buy what's called reinsurance. So they buy insurance to help in case, to support the fact in case they need some help in paying off claims. And that's been an issue because the reinsurance has gone up. And then insurance companies will also buy bonds as a revenue generator along with their premiums, the cost of the insurance. But we went.
Did you know this?
But we went through 2 years of interest rates at 3%, 2.5%. So the bonds weren't worth anything. So they didn't get that additional revenue. So if you take all of that into consideration, that's why we're seeing an increase in premiums.
And is that the same for why there's a increase in homeowners insurance policies and flood policies?
Yes. Well, flood's a little different, but yes, I mean, that's the reason we're seeing, because those all have all affect your personal insurance. Now, from a flood perspective, the National Flood Insurance Program had done some things a couple years ago to try to level out the cost of the premium so more people would invest in flood coverage. And one of the things they did is they went beyond just looking at an elevation level, but they looked at the value of the home. So the cost of flood insurance for a $2 million home should be more than the cost of flood insurance for a $250,000 home, because it's going to take more to repair that home.
Of course, or rebuild it. Yeah.
Rebuild it. They're also looking at how often an area floods, and they also take a look at the type of floods. So based on that, their hope is that it'll level out the playing field, and in many cases around the U.S., make flood coverage less expensive. That has not benefited us in the Houston area because of the fact we do have a propensity to flood.
I was just going to say, based on what you just said, my flood insurance premium doubled this year. So.
Well, because when they did that greater analysis, areas that are more likely to flood are going to pay for it.
Wow. What are some of the things that people should be looking at when they're trying to determine whether or not the current coverage they have is the correct insurance that they need, and or shopping companies?
Well, sure. I think the most important thing is to understand what's important to you and what kind of coverage you need and what coverage you feel like you desire. Having an insurance advisor to work with that can walk you through that process and ask the right type of questions for you to determine what makes sense, because you may find an alternative that's priced really nicely, but you also may find out that the replacement costs levels are significantly low, that if you were to have an issue, it doesn't solve your problem. Or the out-of-pocket cost is fairly great. So you've got to be able to balance what your budget will allow for from a premium perspective, the cost of the insurance, versus what is it going to take if you have a claim and if you have an incident. The other thing is to make sure that having that conversation with the insurance advisor, that you understand what coverage you do and don't have. For example, home insurance plans will cover 4 different types of water damage, or potentially cover 4 different types. Not all do, and not all do at the same level. So being able to ask, do I have that coverage, and at what level is important? Is it replacement cost versus actual cash value? So actual cash value, they're going to help replace, but there's going to be depreciation included prior to. Replacement cost is at today's market value. So understanding those types of things can help you make a better decision. So it, again, as I said, our definition of being properly insured is when you walk away, you're comfortable knowing that this is what coverage I have versus the risk that I'm taking on myself versus what I'm placing on the insurance company.
So it's not necessarily about the monthly premium that you need to be concerned about. It's what you're getting for what you're paying for.
Yes, and it's what you feel like that you need at that point in your life. So it could be a situation where I can only afford bare minimum, or I'm okay with the risk, and I'm comfortable with the risk, so I'm okay with maybe a little less coverage.
Right.
There are some people that are risk averse, and they're more comfortable knowing that if something happens, they're covered. One of the examples we use in the 2 Sides of the Water class that we teach, talking about flood insurance and home insurance, is an inch of water can do $25,000 worth of damage to a home, and then the average damage for flood damage to a home is something like $43,000. So when you have, at least you have that knowledge, so that when you make a decision about flood coverage, as an example, you can make the determination, I'm willing to take that risk, or I would be devastated if I had to come up with $43,000 to repair my home. So maybe it is worth having flood insurance.
Now, you mentioned that flood insurance premiums and costs or insurance costs are looked at based on their level as well as their flood level as well as the value of the home. Do insurance companies take into consideration costs for materials?
Sure.
Well?
I mean, that's part of what they're going to take a look at is when they're evaluating what it would take to replace a home.
Because I mean, during and after COVID, a sheet of plywood was $350.
So yeah, they're going to take that. They're going to take that into consideration because they're going to have an idea of what it would take to bring back a $2 million home to where it was prior to the flood.
Where do you see the insurance industry, and you can pick any aspect or be broad about it, where do you see the insurance industry going in the next 3 to 5 years? I mean, are rates, and I mean no disrespect, but in some instances, if insurance rates, and we're not talking about taxes on this podcast, but if interest rates and taxes continue to go up, they're gonna price us out of our houses. I mean, we're not gonna be able to. I mean, my mortgage is $1,000 a month, and only $200 of it goes towards principal. The rest of it's insurance and taxes. At what point does somebody say,
"Yeah,
we're done. We can't raise them anymore"?
Well, first thing I would say is that remember we're not an insurance company.
Right.
We're a broker and we represent. That being said, from a commercial perspective, we're seeing insurance companies expecting their clients, our clients, to be partners. Mm-hmm. That there are some expectations that they have that you do some things to minimize those risks in some instances before they'll even considering writing coverage. Mm-hmm. So do you use multifaceted authentication? Do you have training manuals? Is your staff up to date with their CEs? Mm-hmm. If you're a real estate broker, insurance companies like it when you promote and recommend and sell home warranties because that means less claims that are going to go against mm-hmm. them. And I think you're going to see some of those same kinds of thought coming in from a personal perspective. I know that a lot of the insurance companies like when people have those attachments on the car that tells them how many miles they drove and how mm-hmm. fast they drove and when did they drive. And if you're driving conservatively and you're being smart about when and how you drive, then you've got a chance to be rewarded with potentially lower premium. So I think in a broad sense, what you're going to see is an expectation that they're going to want some partnerships. Mm-hmm. I think you're going to see, I think you're really going to have to pay attention, and that's where having an advisor makes sense about what coverage you do and don't have. Because mm-hmm. that could really be disastrous if you assume that you have coverage and when you have a claim and it's denied, then you're in deep snow.
Mm-hmm. What is tell us about what's different between or with Stewart Insurance. If someone was looking for an insurance broker, how do you help someone that might be a little different than your competitors? Well,
one thing, you've heard me say nothing but the word advisor. Mm-hmm. So, we don't have insurance agents. We have insurance advisors, and they work with our clients to make sure that they do understand the coverage that they have and they are properly insured. So we're not solely pushing rates. Mm-hmm. And that doesn't mean we don't have clients that have a very conservative coverage, mm-hmm. But at least we've taken the time to have that conversation. So that's important. You'll hear us talk in terms of plans versus policies, that we take the time to build a plan to see what your total coverage package ought to be, or at least give you the option to make an educated decision versus just throwing a number out in front of you. We really try to focus. We want to make that experience. We call it VIP. We want people to be understood. We want them to feel like that they're empowered to make the right decision when they move forward. We want them to feel like it's all about them. That when they're done with the conversation, we're not jumping onto the next call. Right. That we want to take the time to make sure. So when they're done, it's like, that was insurance? Yeah, really. Wow.
I've never experienced that before.
So that's really what we want and what we expect for our clients and what we hope our clients expect from us. I guess that's the other aspect of it is we don't have customers. We have mm-hmm. clients because we feel like customer is a transactional term and a transactional situation. Clients is relationship driven and relationship based.
Is there anybody that's listening to this podcast, watching this podcast, is there anything you'd like them to know about John Bramblett as far as your approach to your craft?
Well, I was exposed to a sales process many years ago from a company called Integrity Solutions. It was developed by a gentleman named Ron Willingham, and at the time was called Integrity Selling. Mm-hmm. And it's very much of a relationship-based sales process. But the thing that struck me the most, and it's not even in his book, Integrity Selling for the 21st Century, which I would recommend, but Ron Willingham's definition of sales, and I think it's even broader than that, is building relationships, meeting needs, and providing value. So if you did that with every person, every company that you dealt with, mm-hmm. if you thought about that, it would be remarkable. I mean, the first time that I'm licensed to be able to facilitate those courses, and the first time that I did that, we had a graduation ceremony, and one of the ladies that went through the course got up and in tears said that course made a difference in the relationship she had with her wife or with her daughter, because it teaches you to find out what's important to the client versus showing up and throwing up. Mm-hmm. And it teaches you to understand that we all have different styles and different ways that we interact, and making sure that I recognize that. So if I'm dealing with Kevin Davidson and Kevin likes to visit and tell jokes and talk about the weekend, let's do that, and then we can get to business. So if I'm dealing with Kevin Davidson and he's a controller and he wants facts and figures, coming in and telling jokes is not going to make Kevin comfortable.
Right.
So understanding that.
It's like the difference between working with a traditional buyer-seller or a real estate investor.
Yes, exactly. So that idea of building relationships, meeting needs, and providing value, I hope that my clients see that and the folks that I deal with see that. We're big believers in giving first. So that's why I'm on the board of the Houston Independent Real Estate Brokers Association. Mm-hmm. I'm on the board of the Houston Mortgage Bankers Association. I teach classes through HAR. I'm on the education committee of the Houston Black Real Estate Association. So I'm out giving back to the community. And I guess the last thing that also kind of came from Integrity Solutions is I believe everybody's a salesperson. That we all, if you buy into that idea of sales as building relationships, meeting needs, and providing value, then we're all selling something, whether it's convincing a spouse on where you want to go for dinner, mm-hmm. or convincing your children that it's time to take on some chores, or working with a client to determine what's the best type of cyber coverage or home coverage for them. We're all salespeople at some level.
Right. You mentioned CE classes through HAR, so you do offer continuing education for the real estate agents in the Houston area. Actually,
state of Texas. So real estate agents and brokers for the state of Texas, yes.
Yeah. And you want to plug the radio show?
Sure. So the CE classes that we offer are two sides of water. Insurance companies look at water damage from a flood perspective, rising water outside the home, some other elements of that definition, or inside the home, and there's 4 types. So we cover those two, and the insurance that can offset those risks. We have property insurance essentials for real estate professionals. So we look at 6 different types of residential real estate transactions. So, it's your primary residence, it's an investment property, you're doing construction, it's vacant or it's vacant land. Mm-hmm. What are the types of insurance plans ought to be considered so a real estate broker or a real estate agent can provide some guidance to their clients? And then we have one that talks about real estate liability, looking at risks and avoiding them. We look at 7 different risks that real estate agents and real estate brokers face on a daily basis, 8 ways that they can minimize them. We have couple of case studies we walk through to give real life examples, and then we share 3 different types of insurance that can offset those risks.
And tell everybody about your radio show.
So it's actually Stewart Title's radio show.
Yes, but you guys are the ones that
we underwrite it. That's correct. So Stewart Title has a radio show called Real Estate Matters, and it airs every Sunday at 5 p.m. on 950 AM KPRC. You can listen to it live. You can listen to it through the iHeartMedia app. You can listen to past shows at stewart.com/radio. But it's an hour-long discussion about real estate. So we have brokers and realtors and professionals that support the industry and we have people both locally and internationally talking about real estate. There's a thrilling, riveting insurance segment each week that's really worth a listen.
He wraps up the show every week. Yeah.
So that's really interesting. And like Kevin's Korner, if you'd like to be on the show, and we can then your segment you can use from a marketing perspective. Either let Kevin or myself know, and we'd be happy to work with you to see about securing a spot.
Awesome. We record every Monday, so for a Sunday show. So, I want to appreciate you being on the podcast.
Oh, thank you for having me.
Is there anything else you want the podcast world to know?
If you'd like to be properly insured, please reach out to Stewart Insurance. You can contact me directly, or just ask for any of our advisors, both on the personal line side or the business side. You can reach us at 866-798-2827. That's 866-798-2827. You can learn more about us at stewartinsurance.com.
Do you have an email address you want to give them?
stewartinsurance@stewart.com.
Awesome. Well, thank you very much for being on the podcast. I appreciate it, John. Lots of great information. I'm not an insurance person, but he knows everything that you need to know. So we'll be back in just a few minutes with our second guest. Say bye, John.
Bye, John.
Hey, everybody, we're back. Kevin Davidson, your host for Kevin's Korner, Real Estate from a Marketing Perspective. This is episode number 17. This is the second segment of the episode, and I have Jason Miller here from Renter's Warehouse. Say hi, Jason.
Hi there.
Tell
hey,
them
Kevin.
Hi, not me.
Hi, hey, Kevin. Hi, everybody. How are you?
You're not a little nervous, are you?
No, I'm good.
Okay, good. So Jason is from Renter's Warehouse, and everybody that knows me knows that I spent 7 years in the property management business, and that's what Renter's Warehouse does. And I told Jason this when we had lunch a couple of weeks ago, but Renter's Warehouse was our number one competition. Now that I'm not in property management, congratulations. You're now number one. So tell everybody what you do, what Renter's Warehouse is.
So I'm a VP of Sales and Marketing here in the Houston franchise, and spend most of my time running our team of licensed realtors who, by virtue of doing what we do, they're all very much investment real estate experts.
Now, I mentioned this in the first segment, but how true of a statement is it that when an agent deals with a real estate investor versus dealing with a traditional buyer and seller is not the same thing?
It's definitely not the same thing, and it's a great question. And we do both, and then there's kind of a little bit of the middle ground where we hold someone's hand. We call it the accidental investor, right? That's the one that they bought a house to live in, and they bought it to live in. They didn't buy it as an investment, and then they have an opportunity or life happens or whatever. They need to move. They don't want to sell the house. They want to rent it. And so then we help them change gears mentally from being a homeowner to being an investor. And so that they no longer see that house as a home, but now it's a business.
Why would you do that? What is it about the house or the situation they're in that makes you convince them to be an investor versus live in the house?
It depends on the situation, but like I said, it depends. Sometimes they didn't necessarily want to be an investor. So we're expounding on the virtues of having a rental property as a business. And sometimes they want to be, and then we're actually explaining the business to them.
Okay. In my experience, real estate investors either get it or they don't. Not everybody can be a real estate investor, but if you are a real estate investor, whether you're working with an agent or you're not, you already have your own portfolio. In my experience, I'll say a large percentage of real estate investors end up, if they don't do it in the beginning, they end up realizing, I don't want to manage this. Okay? 100%. I don't want to end up being like Kevin, bald-headed, pulling their hair out.
It's true.
So what are some of the things that happen to investors that make them realize they need somebody like you in your company?
Well, ultimately, what it comes down to is, I phrase it as the question, what's your time worth, right?
Exactly.
And there's a formula for it, right? You can take your income, divide it by 2,000 40-hour work week, and that gives you a rough amount what your time is worth. And so once people break that down, it doesn't take much time for it to be. It gets really onerous for what amounts to grunt work that really you can outsource. Our clients mostly fall into the 3 categories. They have a day job, they own a business, or they're retired. And in all 3 of those cases, they don't want to mess with the daily grunt work, even when things are going well. But especially if things go sideways, they may or may not have the expertise to handle an eviction smoothly or collections, effectively. So good or bad, there's real benefit. I mean, most people, if you have a yard guy or a pool guy, our basic property management service is $149 per month. Most people pay their pool guy or their yard guy more than that. So it doesn't take much for you to realize, hey, that's money well spent. You're not taking the phone calls during dinner, right, or whatever it may be.
My toilet's clogged at 3 o'clock in the morning.
That's exactly right.
So what services does Renters Warehouse offer? Are you guys a full-service property management company? Are you part-time? I mean, tell everybody what it is you do for investors.
Sure. Great question. So, and I tell people a lot. Really, we are a full-service real estate brokerage and a property management company all under the same roof. So we can certainly do retail buys and sells. We do those all the time. But probably 75, 80% of what we do is leasing and managing the properties. We will happily do just one or the other, depending on the client situation, but we really play our best baseball when we're doing both.
And you guys have real estate agents on staff that handle your transactions, correct?
They are independent contractors, but they are exclusive to us, and they work more or less geographically. We cover the entire universe that we call the Houston area.
And you guys are, in order to do what you do, you're a brokerage, right?
Correct.
Brokerage license,
Correct.
everything. So tell everybody a little bit about Renters Warehouse, where you guys operate, how big you are, how long you've been around.
Sure. Great question. And I'm fortunate to be with some very experienced, trustworthy guys. Our CEO, Rich Drake, is one of the owners, also one of the owners of the largest and oldest Homevestors franchises.
I've heard of
the Houston guys, oldest and largest, him and his 2 partners, Jim Youngblood and Clyde Adams, did flips for years with the Homevestors, the We Buy Ugly Houses guys. Ended up
them?
That's them.
Oh,
That's
wow,
them.
okay.
And ended up with over time with a couple of hundred properties that they either couldn't or didn't want to flip.
Right.
So they rented them out.
Okay.
Started a property management company by default. As you know, it's its own business. It's a lot of work, a lot of moving parts, right?
Yeah.
So about 10 years ago, 11 years, no, coming up on 10 years, bought the Renters Warehouse franchise. So we handle the entire Houston area, Conroe to Galveston, Katy to Baytown.
Are you guys the only Renters Warehouse in Houston?
In Houston, correct.
Wow. So you have
the entire Houston area.
All right. And what type of, because I know when I was in the property management business, it wasn't feasible for us to work with every investor that called us. So what type of client, who's your target market? What type of client are you looking to work with?
So really anyone that owns 50 doors or less, right?
Really?
Absolutely. And the bulk of our clients have between 1 and 5, right? We have had some over the years that had north of 100. Once you get to 50 and above, then the economics really start to make you lean towards, hey, maybe I hire somebody full time. But for somebody that has a handful, easily up to 20, that has it as an investment, not their primary source of income, Renters Warehouse or somebody like us makes a lot of sense for them.
So if I just want to be clear. So if I called you up and I said, I've got 200 properties and I don't like my property manager anymore, is that not something you'd want to take on? We
would absolutely run the numbers to see.
Okay.
And that's really where it kind of comes down to. A lot of the borderline cases, a lot of times, 100 units, depending on what the rents are, we can make a lot of sense.
And what do you guys manage? What type of property?
Oh, we're primarily single family, but we do a fair number of multifamily, a lot of duplexes and quads and 6-packs and 12-packs.
Tell everybody what the difference between a single family home, a multifamily, and a duplex and quad and all that is. Because when I first got into property management, I thought they were all the same. And they're not.
They're definitely not. For us, from the property management side, they kind of are. Because one door, one address.
Well, you manage them the same.
We manage them the same way, same amount of work, same amount of phone calls, emails, accounting, all those things.
But from a definitions perspective, if someone doesn't know, if I say I have a duplex, what does that mean?
So duplex is just two homes stuck together that share a wall
under the same roof.
Under the same roof, that's
right.
So that's it. That's really the extent.
Exactly. So, and you guys don't manage commercial.
Only our own. We've got a building out in Manville that we have commercial space there, but no, we don't manage commercial for other people.
And what about apartments?
We've done a few. Some smaller complexes make sense. We've done some big ones for short-term turnarounds, but the bigger ones, that's where it tends to make more sense for them to go, okay, I'll go ahead and go through the pain and suffering of hiring someone and getting people on staff and then managing a little company within a company.
Exactly. Yeah, something that because you know where I was for 5 years.
Right.
Something we used to tell everybody is, well, why do you only manage single family homes? And I always remember what my old boss and now friend Steve Rosenberg used to say, because we're excellent at making cheese pizzas, and we're only going to make cheese pizzas. We're not going to put pepperoni in it. We're not going to put anything else on it because we don't know how to do that well. We know how to manage single-family homes. So in saying that, we managed very few duplexes, very few multifamily, no apartments, and no commercial because it's a different animal. We didn't know how to do it right.
It's different enough that it does make a difference. If you're aware, then you can cherry pick and make sure it's a good fit before you step off into something that's not a good fit, which is why we offer our 90-day test drive to new clients.
There you go.
Right? So they can try us out and see if it's going to be a good fit for everybody. Because if it's not, usually 3 months is enough time to be able to tell.
So remember that, guys. They have a 90-day guarantee.
Yep.
Right.
So within that first 90 days, if we decide it's not a good fit, hey, this is too much, or I don't like it, or Jason's a jerk, or whatever it is, they can pull the ripcord. They can pull the ripcord. We no termination fee, and we actually refund their management fees. So we really try hard to have them make a deliberate, conscious, low-pressure decision, right? Because usually when they come to us, there's pain involved. We want to help them with that pain, but once that pain has subsided, we want to make sure they can get the emotion out of the way, engage the brain also, and go, hey, yeah, this is still as good a fit as it looked like to start with.
So for someone out there that is considering getting into investing or is already has a portfolio, whether it be 1 or 10 or 15 or 20, could they come to you to find their next investment property, help them purchase it, get it ready to put it on the market, lease it, and manage it? Everything.
You just described our ideal client, and then we rinse and repeat. Absolutely. We can do all of those things.
So if you're a real estate investor that's looking to get into real estate investing, or you already are, and you're looking for a place that you can basically one-stop shop everything you need, Renter's Warehouse is where you should go.
Yep.
So let's talk a little bit about how does Renter's Warehouse, or how does Jason Miller get new leads? How do you guys grow? What do you do marketing wise?
So for years, our bread and butter was a two-prong approach. We did a lot of radio. So, we're aware of the show that John is on, mentioned earlier in your other podcast.
The Real Estate Matters?
Correct. So, but we still do radio advertising. Over the years, we may have gotten saturated, or maybe the world has changed. So we're really doing even more. We've shifted our balance a bit to a more balanced approach between traditional radio, and then your iHeartRadio, your apps, and then your pure online advertising, Google, Facebook, etc.
Organic stuff.
Correct.
Okay.
So we really cover the universe of different media, whereas we used to be very radio focused.
Does the marketing that you're talking about from the online perspective, social media, Google, all that stuff, does that come from Renter's Warehouse corporate, or is there someone in your office that does that?
Some of both. Some of both. Yep. Okay. So on the radio and the big media buys, we do get some leverage from our corporate folks. But because we're Houston only, we also drill down ourselves into figuring out what the Houston market or folks that want to be in the Houston market respond to the best.
Okay. And then you guys have I'll call it a happy hour, but what do you call it that you do? Is it quarterly?
So
or is it monthly?
For years, we sponsored we call it the big event, the big investor event with Jet Lending, and we did that every month, and it was free food, free beverages, and free education. It's fantastic. Just recently, just this year, we have shifted to doing happy hours still every month. It is the third Wednesday of every month, and we change locations to different parts of town because the Houston metro is so big, and we were getting a lot of feedback that, hey, I really wanted to come to your event, but at that time of day, it's an hour and a half, to get there one way. And so what we've done is different venues around town, Jimmy Chongas and Gringos and those folks that have private rooms. And we do a happy hour. We still do a presentation, but still provide free food and beverage. But it's more of an intimate setting. So we can have, we traded some quantity for quality. Plus, we're touching folks more that were aware of us. But it was just logistically difficult to come actually shake hands in person. So it's working out well.
Oh, that was my next question. Is it working, changing locations?
Absolutely.
What's the head count like at one of your events?
So we have gone from the big event. We used to be, depending on the month, 400 to 1,000 people would show up, right, every month.
I think I went to one of your events in the DFW area.
It was probably a similar format. It wasn't ours, but it was a similar format.
But it was with Jet Lending, though.
Yeah, Jet does business all over the state. Yeah. And now we're, 30 to 60 folks. But, it's more of even more of a conversation. The other was more of a class with a Q&A with some food. And now it's really more of a conversation. So you can get a little deeper into things.
So when you come to this event that we're talking about, what can someone that comes expect, and who comes to it? Is it an agent? Is it an investor? Is it both? Are there vendors? Tell me who it is.
It's all of those things. We have an awful lot of realtors, brokers, vendors like insurance companies, construction companies, anyone that touches the real estate business, investors, wholesalers, or wants to get into the business or wants to expand their footprint in the business. Come and they get real, honest, hard, the good, the bad, and the ugly of the business. And so people leave feeling good about who they talked to and what they learned.
Who does who are your presenters? Is there like a presentation during the event?
There is a brief presentation, usually 15, 20 minutes.
Okay. And
usually it's a tag team between our CEO, Rich Drake, and our president and COO, Mark Zimmerman.
Okay. Are you guys, if I was a real estate agent, are you guys looking for more agents?
We are not at the moment looking for more dedicated Renters Warehouse agents. We do have an affiliate brokerage that we're starting that we absolutely are.
Starting, so when is that going to be?
We just spooled it up just a few months ago. It's called 1836 Real Estate, common ownership, but different management. So for agents who are already in the business, maybe looking for a new place to hang their license, give me a call. That's something we could talk about for sure.
Are you guys going to operate your new brokerage differently or non-traditionally than a regular brokerage?
More like a regular brokerage. So it's a different model than Renters Warehouse. Okay. So same ownership, different management, different model, just to cover another part of the space.
So tell everybody that's going to be seeing this podcast what it is about Renters Warehouse that makes you different from your competition and why they should hire you if they need a property management company.
So from a client perspective, and like your friend said earlier, we believe in that relationship approach. We tell them the good, the bad, and the ugly right up front, to the point where the fees are in bold in the contract. So there's no fine print. It's all there. But some of the things that make us different are we're the biggest. We think we're the best. We're not perfect, right? We're people like everyone else. When a mistake is made, we're very good at figuring out what happened and how to make it right from a peace of mind. And I think that's our biggest differentiator. We offer things like a tenant warranty. So when we lease a property and we place that tenant, right, we do the screening, we do the approval, but if that tenant breaks the lease in the warranty period, we replace them for free. Any other realtor in town, they're going to charge you another commission. So that's one. If we're managing the property also, that warranty is longer, and you have the opportunity for things like rent protection, which is up to 2 months of lost rent from a broken lease, or you have the option for rent advance. You can get a year's rent once it's leased up front in your pocket, which some investors don't care for. They're like, no, thanks. I'll keep all of it and take the risk. And some are like, yeah, I'll take that, and they go buy another rental property. So it just depends on where they're at.
And there's two things that I wanted to ask, and I forgot to ask. Number one, from a maintenance perspective, do you guys handle all of the maintenance requests, and do you have your own vendors that you work with?
That's a great question. We do take all of those calls, whether they're an actual phone call or an email or a message through an app. We take those calls, we handle them, and then we distribute those to our pool of third-party licensed insured vendors. The handyman model we did for a while, it's great when it works, but boy, it only takes one time to go bad, and it absolutely eats your lunch. So we don't do that anymore, but that's a big piece of what we do for sure.
Okay, so if an investor comes to you and hires you to manage their property, they don't need to come with their own plumber or roofer or whatever. You guys have the
We have folks that we have worked with before that we know the pricing is fair, not the cheapest, not the most expensive, but they charge enough to stand behind their work, which is really important. So
awesome. That's
how we work.
And same question I asked John. What is it about Jason Miller that everybody should know?
That's a great question.
The hardest.
It kind of is, right? I guess I'm just really grateful to be able to work with a team that I know if there's a mistake made, it was honest. Or if I make a mistake, they know it was an honest one, and we have a chance to go fix it, right? Because we're all going to make mistakes, or things happen. Life happens, business happens. A lot of times it's your attitude and your approach to those things that makes you different from others. And that really is part of our culture. It sounds like a cliche. It happens to be true. I've known these guys personally for 20 plus years, and the trust, I would argue, is the most important element of any business. Without trust, you have nothing. The most intelligence, the most skill, the most tools, the most capability, the broadest reach, none of that matters if you can't trust what that person's telling you.
In the industry that we're in real estate, people do business with people that they know, like, and trust. I truly believe that. And if 100%. Someone doesn't trust you, it's never going to work.
That's exactly right.
And in today's environment, I don't know if you've noticed it, but customer service in this country is terrible right now.
It's steadily declined over the years, for sure.
So, well, this is great. Tell everybody how to get a hold of you if they need a property management company or to buy a property or whatever.
Well, so you can catch us a couple different ways. Our main phone number is 713-224-RENT, which is 713-224-7368. You can email the company at houston@renterswarehouse.com. And for everybody listening, licensed or not, I love paying referral fees.
Oh, here, check this out. Tell them about go ahead.
The referral fees, it's up to $1,000 per door. That's not per client. That is per door. And we would rather pay those to anyone rather than spend that money on advertising. Those are great relationships. We'll pay you $500 for a leasing referral. You often have to be licensed to get that, but not always. And property management referral is another $500. That's per door, and anybody can get that.
Wow. So did you hear that, guys? You don't have to be in real estate to make money off of this guy.
That's right. That's right.
Just send him a property management referral or a leasing referral.
And the 90-day test drive on the property management side is really important, right? So when someone recommends us for the management side, they can feel good that if it's not a good fit, they're not going to burn their relationship or their friendship, right? Because if they don't like it, they'll have a chance to pull the ripcord.
There you go. Tell them how to get a hold of you one more time.
One more time. Houston at renterswarehouse.com, or our main line, 713-224-RENT, which is 713-224-7368. Or if you want to email me personally, jmiller, Jmiller, at renterswarehouse.com.
Awesome. Again, thank you for being on the podcast.
Kevin, thank you, sir.
It was a pleasure. This was great. So
I really appreciate it.
Episode number 17. Thanks, guys, for watching. Again, I need to mention and thank my support, who I couldn't do this without. Jennifer Smitis, the Area Vice President, Caitlin Kornick, Devaney Devon, and Wendy Santana. And again, if you're a real estate agent or a vendor that operates in the Fort Bend County area and you'd like to be on the podcast, free advertising for your business, reach out to me, 832-654-0527, or email me at kevin.davidson@stewart.com. This is Kevin's Corner, Real Estate from a Marketing Perspective, episode number 17. See you guys next week. Say bye.
Adios.